even if something as simple as creating a Discord emoji, you're participating in a conversation, you're creating. So I think that's one of the things that's really rewarding about community is just empowering people that are making anything you're small related to whatever you're a community managing. There's something about the games that gives us this shared connection. I think that's really special. I mean, in no other time of history have we had these abilities to meet people from all over the world, from all different
Mm.
backgrounds, and share in this one love. And when a community thrives, it's not just something that you're building as a community lead, your community starts creating with you. And that's so cool. It's not just good for business, but it's so cool.
Welcome to this episode of the Community Lounge, the podcast where I chat with community managers from the video games industry who tell me their story, talk about the challenges they face, and share tips to help other community managers do their job better. I'm your host, Steve McLeod. Now, before I begin today's episode, I want to tell you quickly about the guides we are creating for community managers. Some of these guides are already finished and we've been getting great feedback about them. Topics we've covered so far include your first week as a community manager, what actually matters, burnout, recognizing it, dealing with it and preventing it, and becoming a community manager, real life stories. You'll find all of our guides and past episodes at featureupvote.com/thecommunitylounge. You'll find that link in the description. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Okay, on with the show. Today I'm joined by Milissa Maxin. Milissa is currently Senior Community Manager at Singularity 6, makers of cozy MMO Palia, or as I would pronounce it in my accent, Palia. She has one of the more unusual paths into the industry. She studied music, specifically tuba performance, but today she is a community manager. Welcome to the show, Milissa.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Shall we start with your path into community management? Shall we go with the music angle or the game angle? How would you like to tell us how you got to be where you are today?
I mean, I think they really have to have a little bit of both to understand how I kind of got to the place that I am, but happy to touch on either one first.
Do you get to use tuba performance very much in your day-to-day life as a community manager?
You wouldn't think so, but it comes up more often than you think.
Really?
I
Tell
would
me how.
I've played virtual shows before with the tuba, although I usually stick to guitar and singing in like virtual worlds and such. And I'd say using music more often than tuba, but I've even composed a few things for games and put that music degree to good use.
So this is specifically as a community manager or just in other activities outside of that?
Uh, I'd say mostly just as in the video game industry in general, but yeah, I still like to keep fresh and play my tuba every so often, and I've played in a few video game orchestras for fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Let's go back to the very beginning. Where did you get your interest in being in the games industry?
I like to say I grew up online very early. I was on the computer at about age 4, and I jumped into online communities at about age 9, so sorry about that.
Is that appropriate?
I don't know. I was just very interested in, gaming, and as soon as I could get one of those very old, like, tan computers, I can't even remember what they were called. I was just top it on there, and I played games. My games of choice at the time were like Toontown. I was really into Toontown and Neopets, RuneScape, Habbo Hotel, just some very early 2000s games that were popular at the time. And yeah.
You're not the first guest I've had on the show who's mentioned RuneScape. I think that game was really, really influential on a whole generation of gamers.
I believe it. I know many people from that era that were just absolutely enamored by RuneScape, and a lot of people say that was a really happening time for RuneScape.
So did you already then have an idea that you wanted to work in the games industry, even though you were going down the music path?
Absolutely zero idea. I didn't even consider it an option, honestly.
So how did that happen? You then finished high school and went to I guess a music conservatory or a
Yeah. Yeah, no, I grew up in a at the time smaller Texas town. It's bigger now, but I ended up going to Berklee College of Music and moved from Texas to Boston into the big city. And I was always kind of creative. I got into text role play as I was a teen, and I I was very. It was the early ages of when they were mixing like text role play and video games. And so I was
Sorry, fill me in there.
yeah.
What's text role play? This is a new concept for me.
Yeah, like people kind of writing a collaborative storybook together, playing a character. Um I think the best way to describe it is really just a giant story that everybody kind of contributes to individually, and it continues on. So you'll type out what your character says, what they do. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. It's very creative, collaborative creation.
Okay, kind of inspired a little bit by Mad Libs and role playing that go together.
Yeah, like Dungeons and Dragons, but online and texting.
Okay, so that's what you're doing as a hobby, but you're actually studying music, and I'm still trying to work out how you did the switch from music to games. How did that work?
Well, I was playing tuba by day. I was, tooting around on that tuba, and and then during the times between classes and that I wasn't doing other on campus things, I would be on these role play servers, and I became an administrator. I would help out. I would make events on these gaming servers, and sorry to my professors, I should have been practicing. But it was kind of a Hannah Montana, a little bit of best of both worlds there.
Uh-huh. And you said you're an administrator in a forum, but this was a voluntary role, or this was something you were getting paid for? Or
Initially, it was
your own forums?
yeah, initially it was a volunteer, and yeah, it was actually on the game, so you'd be typing into kind of a chat interface on top of the game. Whether there was one on Minecraft, and there was one on San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto, and that was the one that really I stuck to for about 9 years.
Wow. Well, and then how did that turn into a job?
So one day, somebody from that community approached me, and this is after Grand Theft Auto 5 had launched. It was like, hey, we should do this, but Grand Theft Auto 5. And this was a couple of folks, international folks, like about three folks that I had. I said folks a lot. But three friends that I had that were over in Europe, and they were like, yeah, we've like what we've been doing here. Let's take it over to Grand Theft Auto 5. And it was one of the very first servers on Grand Theft Auto 5. And around the same time, Grand Theft Auto 5 roleplay really took off on Twitch. And so it was just kind of like a rocket at that point after we established this area. And I was, kind of leading up the community. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that's what I was doing kind of fell in the community management umbrella, but it was something I enjoyed doing, and bringing people together to write this crazy, wacky storybook together.
And that was paid, or this was still voluntary work?
This was it is a little bit of mix of both. We got perks, but I wouldn't say a full-time kind of position. But we got to a point where we were getting perks from it, I should say.
What types of perks can you say?
I can't. It's been so long. I think we get a DoorDash credit every now and then or something like that. It is a long time ago, but yeah, I'd say it's a solid mix.
Uh-huh. And how did that lead into a community management role?
Yeah, so I graduated from Berklee. I had done a lot of things kind of video game adjacent, particularly playing in the video game orchestras, and kind of playing these kind of backing tracks to video games at the time at Berklee. And graduated, I was like, oh, I love playing music, but this is like a really difficult career to continue on with. It's very cutthroat. I'm sure there's usually like one tuba per orchestra as well, and
Uh-huh.
so it was like I really like doing this, but I really love like doing this in games as well. And I'd never heard of community management as a like an official job title at the time. But yeah, no, I during this time I like revisited a platform called Second Life that I had kind of like noodled around on before, and they have these like live open mics there. It's like a virtual world that you can hop into. It opened in the early 2000s, and you can hop into this virtual world and do virtually anything. There was some like live open mic shows, and occasionally for fun, I would just go in and either play the guitar or play the tuba. I did a few times. They knew me as Tuba Girl for a little bit. Um, and I would just play for people, and other people would come up too and play their instruments. And it was a really neat time.
Second Life was kind of what the metaverse tried to be, right? When the metaverse was proclaimed as this new thing, like a lot of people were saying, no, this is just Second Life. It already exists.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's a lot of traction at the time as well that uh, ended up I ended up joining Second Life, so I'll kind of get a little rewind here a little bit. So I hopped in and I found out about this platform they had called Sansar, and I hopped in and I met a few people that were on there, including one of the people that actually worked on the platform, and I hopped on there. I played a little bit of tuba as well, and we just got started to talking. And then one of the people that worked there was like, "Hey, by the way, they opened up a customer support role. You should absolutely apply. You know, this is what you've been doing anyway." After I explained a little bit of my background, and I was like, "I can I? Is that like a thing you can do?" So, um, I ended up applying, and I feel very incredibly lucky that I got an interview, and I was a little bit terrified, honestly. So it was exciting. I ended up interviewing, and they were like, "Yeah, you're in." And so I moved to Georgia to start. So another big move there, and I worked on both Sansar and Second Life at the time.
What was Sansar exactly?
Sansar was like it was Linden Lab's product that was the only way I can describe it is kind of like Second Life, but newer, like VR integrated. Especially there was a heavy focus on VR, but it was still a virtual world where everybody can contribute and make these worlds, make their own games and experiences within it. Very much a UGC platform.
Okay, so you got in there as customer support. Often customer support does get conflated with community management. In fact, I think there was a time before community manager was a well-known role. In fact, you were often just called customer support. Was that the case for you?
Um, we had a dedicated community manager, and I always appreciated being able to kind of go into that space, and that's where I really learned what a community manager was. I hadn't really. It was around the time that I actually entered the video game industry at that point that I was like, whoa, that's where I want to be.
Yep. Tell me more.
Yeah, no, I spent time there. I continued to help work, on, different community programs, putting together, these little events. I remember we did like a cybersecurity day event where we all hopped into the virtual Taj Mahal. That was a fun one. And I had a great time helping put those on for people. And, eventually the community manager position opened up actually. And that same friend was like, "You should email the CEO and tell them that you should be the new community manager." And in retrospect, absolutely bold move. But I was like, you know what? I should. And I did. And they sent me an email back. We're like, "Hey, we want you to come out to San Francisco to interview." And it was a very, very bold move. That CEO is a great person. But yeah, I ended up flying out, interviewing. And while I didn't get the role then, I actually was invited to kind of transition over to a marketing specialist. And that's where I really built out the virtual events team and like an ambassador team, and worked pretty directly with the community team at the time. So it was a pretty big leap of faith there, but it paid off, I feel like, eventually.
Leap of faith for them or for you?
Maybe
And when
both.
we're still talking about Linden Labs here, right? This is Second Life.
Yes, yes, Second Life Sansar. Um,
So you started as customer support. You're now in a marketing role, but you're still not a community manager. This is quite
yeah,
a long path to get there. Often
it,
the community manager is an entry role for a lot of people, but you've built your way there. So yeah, tell me, keep going on with the story there.
yeah. And so, eventually the community manager role also opens up again. And, I had always said, this is where my interest is. And they ended up kind of transitioning me to that role. And that's where I really kind of took the reins officially. I got to meet so many wonderful people. Just absolutely, this was like around 2019, 2020. And so, I'd already been interacting with a lot of these people and they're phenomenal. They're international people from ages 18 to 89. Like, like it's just such a diverse group of people from all over the world. And, during this time, I was also learning from these people who were, creators. They were developers. They were just a vast collection of talented people, and I was learning how to do 3D modeling. I was learning how to, play virtual DJ shows and stuff at the time, kind of putting my music skills back to work. And, I still got to blend in music at the time. So it was really fun. And, we did a lot of, integrations with different events. I met some really memorable people like the granddad that did VR DJ shows. Like I said, they taught me how to DJ in VR. We would do like dual shows. They'd invite the community manager to come do an open mic night, and so I still got to do that. And met an Italian fashion designer. I got to explain what Olive Garden was to them, and that was a funny time. So they'd never heard of the American restaurant. And yeah, there's so many wonderful
you said
people.
Olive Garden.
Yes.
See, I only know of this from television shows. I don't live in America. I don't think it's a thing outside of the States.
I don't think it is, and if you ask the person I introduced it to, it shouldn't be either. They were appalled. But it was a fun time, and it was a really unique time because everybody, was inside, and so a lot of people just turned to the virtual worlds to interact, and you started to meet people you wouldn't have ever otherwise come into contact with. And, it helped because you had a lot of new people coming in. We were hosting these big events with people like we had like the Star Trek folks like Rod Roddenberry and their foundation. They were hosting Star Trek events. Monster Cat, the folks at Glastonbury even came in and hosted virtual concerts. Splinter in the Grass, Sanrio, Smithsonian, and so many other wonderful folks that just came in and hosted these virtual events where, you had people from almost every country in the world coming to these from all different backgrounds. Yeah.
Now your time at Second Life eventually came to an end. Is Second Life still running and active?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You never know what you're going to find.
I kind of get some perverse pleasure out of the fact that the metaverse came with a flash and then died. I think they've closed it down recently, and the Second Life has just steadily been going all this time. I don't know why it is, but I really like this.
It's really cool, and there's so many amazing creations that have built up over the years that you could still go explore to this very day. It's really cool that it's still kicking and that it's, I would say, even thriving in many areas.
So, listeners, I don't just throw people into these interviews. I do give them an idea of what questions I'm going to ask, and I give them a chance to create some notes that I can read while we're talking. And I have to say that Milissa has given me the most detailed set of notes I've ever seen from anybody, and so much that I'm struggling to work out what exactly I want to ask next. But there is something I do want to hear. Tell me about the marriages. So this is normally where I give people a chance to tell me about a memorable, positive moment you've experienced as a community manager. But in this case, I'm choosing for you. Tell me about the marriages.
Yes. No, there was, especially during the time where all these events were happening, there was all sorts of people that were meeting each other, especially with these events. Like, for example, we had this...
This was during COVID, right? Or
yes.
I think. Right, yeah. So this is why a lot of stuff's happening online that would normally happen in real life.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry
So
for interrupting.
No, that's great context. We had this event called the Comedy Gladiators with Steve Hofstetter, and he would invite different comedians in, and we had kind of a area, like a live studio audience that we would invite community members from, especially for moderation purposes, that we do probably wouldn't be trolling, and it causing disruptions to the live show. Everybody was invited, but this was kind of like the recording area. So we had our live studio audience, and I invited a couple of community members to come to the first show. One was from the UK, one was from America, and was like, you guys should be part of the live studio audience. And so they came in and they were like, this is our first date. and it was so cute. They were in VR together. They went on their first little VR date together. And gosh, it was like a year later, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, we're getting married." And so it was so cute to see.
That is
Um,
so cool. Did they invite you to their wedding?
I think it was especially during the pandemic times. Like
Ah,
they said they wish they could have, but yeah, no, it was very difficult to do the transportation at the time.
and and they met each other because you invited both of them into the live audience of this online event.
Yeah, I think they had been like, they had known of each other, but this was kind of their first date together. And, yeah, they were both really awesome community members.
Folks, if Melissa invites you into the live studio audience, be careful. It might take you in a direction, your life in a direction you weren't expecting.
You never know.
Let's go to the darker equivalent of that question. What's a story of a challenge you've faced as a community manager that stands out in your memory? Because it's not always easy, this job.
Yeah, no, it's not always easy. I could say there's a story that stands out in my mind. So to give a bit of context, we had hosted, like these events in the virtual world. One of them was where we put together this kind of virtual TV set of a cheesy 70s dating show called Be My Boo. And it was, everything you would expect from a cheesy dating show. And we invited on people that had these like robot avatars, just goofy little silly avatars. And one of the things that we did was that we did this Star Trek themed version of the dating show. And, we had been working with the Roddenberry folks, and they invited on Will Wheaton. And for those that don't know Will Wheaton, he's a famous actor, does a lot of really great stuff, and had a role in Star Trek, actually. And one of our community members actually made their avatar from that role in there. So we invited them on, and this was in VR as well, so you could see everybody's like hand movements, not eye movements, but head movements. And I remember we were preparing for the show, doing backstage like mic checks and stuff like that. And this was in 2020, and we had sent over a VR headset to them. And, part of what I had done, or what my responsibility was as community manager at the time, was to help kind of host these events. I think I was actually the MC for this one, but it was also to make sure that the talent was prepped, ready to go. They felt comfortable, because this was like kind of a really new time for VR. It's previously kind of been a gimmick. I wouldn't say gimmick, but it was something that was very niche before this time. And now it was like everybody was getting into VR. It was a very big boom for the time. And Will was having some trouble with their VR headset. And this wasn't a time where you could exactly just go drive over to somebody's house and be like, "Hey, like, here's how you fix it." And so there was some troubleshooting, and, you're talking to Will Wheaton, it's from your bedroom, like, or from your office, it's wild. And so I had to help troubleshoot from miles away, from somebody who I greatly think is a great actor. And, it was very stressful, because you're like, "Oh gosh, I've never seen the VR headset they're working on. Let's see what we can do." Very, very nerve wracking, probably just a Tuesday for them, but, it was definitely something I will always remember, just trying to make sure that we got it right for Will.
How was he? Was he very, very accepting of the situation? Was he a bit of a prima donna?
I mean, anytime you're dealing with tech, it's like troubleshooting a printer. He's a very good sport about it. But yeah, it's never something you're like, "Man, I really want to troubleshoot this." It's just like, how do I fix this and get it going?
Let's move on to practical stuff. So one of the reasons I've created this podcast is that it's really hard to find places to learn the skills to be a community manager. There's very few practical guides for this. Actually, there are now a couple of books, but I'd really like to hear from people how they learn to develop the skills they need in their job. So I'm going to ask you that. Where do you learn how to do your job as a community manager better?
I like to learn from the other community professionals, and I have a couple of those books you mentioned there. Some great stuff. And, like, there's a lot of really great community professionals out there, many that have been on this podcast. And I think it's important to never
stop
learning.
Should we do a name call there? Should we do a name call?
Well, I have Victoria Tran's book. I think it's great. And yeah, I'd say that's the book that I was referencing there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's
So,
important. Okay.
no, go ahead.
It's important to never stop learning. And, but I also learn by being a part of these communities as well. Whether it's like online video game communities or real world communities, and the creators from them, you learn a lot from your community members as well. You know, Lots of different situations you're placed into, and you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So, um, I think it's really excellent that we have so many great community members and creators and champions that come with them. And I think we're all really creators in some way. As long
Yeah.
as you're doing anything that is not just consuming. If you're even just like making cool things in the game, like a cool in-game house, or I've seen a bounce house of fish in Second Life before. That's something as well that you could do. Or people that write steamy fan fiction about your game, about one of the people or multiple characters in your game. It's even if something as simple as creating a Discord emoji or participating in a conversation, you're creating. So I think that's one of the things that's really rewarding about community is just empowering people that are making anything, big or small, related to whatever you're community managing. There's something about the games that gives us this shared connection. I think that's really special. I mean, in no other time of history have we had these abilities to meet people from all over the world, from all different
Mm.
backgrounds, and share in this one love. And when a community thrives, it's not just something that you're building as a community lead. Your community starts creating with you. And that's so cool. It's not just good for business, but it's so cool. And, being able to do this with an international audience is something that we've never been able to do before. Our ancestors, it's such a cool concept to me, and it's something I'm really passionate about, and I, love to keep learning about and love to keep interacting with. It's what makes leading and being part of these communities so special.
Yeah, it's a good thought. I hadn't thought about that before, but really it's become so normal now that we can just meet people from around the world within games and communities that one forgets that this is actually not normal, not typical.
Yeah, my best friend I met video gaming, and I've had friends from all over the world. I even went to London for the first time because of some of the people that I met in these communities back early on in 2013. So
Do you stay at their house?
no, no, no. Don't have that much of leap of faith, but
I'm going
not
to
those.
London next week and had to book a hotel. I was just stunned. Like I always am when I'm going to London, I'm just stunned at the prices there, which is why I was just thinking, oh, how great it would be to have someone to stay with in London. This is why I
Right.
asked that question. It says more about
No.
me than it does about you.
No, no, not for the first time meeting them. No.
And you mentioned that you learn from communities. Now, I assume you mean the gaming communities, the communities of players, but do you also have any involvement in communities of game professionals or communities of other community managers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try to keep up with a lot of the different kind of video game professionals. I mean, I'm part of Women in Games as well, and I think that you can learn from a lot of other excellent folks in that group, and learning from especially not even just other community managers, although that's a great resource, but people in other roles, even at your own company, I think that you really can pick up a lot and learn a lot from them as you learn kind of their perspective, as well as like, what kind of information would be helpful to give to them as a community manager. What kind of things can I help empower them with, whether it's engineering, production, um, any of the different kinds of roles that, it's good to be able to learn their perspective and how you can continue to help them as the community manager.
That's a great segue into my next question. What tips do you have for people wanting to become a community manager?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, keep doing what you're doing and what you're passionate about. And, make sure you keep the lights on. This industry could be tough. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely something you're going through a little bit of a difficult time. But, keep making and building those communities. If it's something you're passionate about, like, I am/was, especially before I even knew what a community manager was, But keep doing it, even if it's just your favorite video game community.
And by just keep doing it, you mean keep doing what?
Uh, Making those communities like I did the virtual events, or meeting up, creating events around them, or creating a Discord, whatever it is. It just kind of depends on different games.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you're passionate about, just keep at it. But keep the lights on.
Yeah, you keep the lights on. You mentioned that it is a tough industry, and I have to say that earlier in our conversation when you said that tuba performance was a tough gig, tough
Yeah.
industry, and that you went into games instead, I was thinking, I'm not sure that's much easier for a lot of people, right? It's
No,
not like you
no.
pick banking or finance or something where there is just this huge industry. You seem to like to
No.
pick the industries that are a bit hard, that have far more people trying to get in than there are places.
No, absolutely. It's definitely an industry where it helps to have passion for what you're doing and be
Yeah,
interested in it yourself. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely helps.
yeah, yeah. Look, we're running out of time, but I still have one really important question. Some would say the most important question. What game have you been playing lately?
I gotta say, I gotta split it between a few. I'm still occasionally writing stories with others in Red Dead Redemption 2. I've recently played Grounded. I've
So,
gone
so
back to.
go back to
Oh
that.
yeah.
What does it mean to be writing stories with others in Red Dead Redemption 2? Because
Well,
given that I've only played like the intro of the game, the first couple of hours, so I'm a little bit of uneducated as to what's involved in the game.
yeah. I mean, they have a role play functionality, or a created one called Redim, and they have roleplay servers. So occasionally I'll hop in and be a cowgirl for a few days.
Okay, I had no idea. Okay, so there's Red Dead Redemption 2 roleplay, making stories inside of it. And what else have you been playing? You said there are some others there.
Yeah, Grounded, which is a fun game. I've returned to my roots and I play the game called Toontown Rewritten, which is kind of a fan-hosted version of the original game. And
Hmm.
Parkitect.
Tell me about the Toontown rewritten. Have they done a good job? Is it true to the original?
Yeah, I think it's really nifty. It's very true to the original, but they've added a few things that kind of bring it into the modern day, and but try to stay pretty true to the original vision.
Occasionally I'll get some really old game I played in my childhood or 20s, and out of nostalgia, I'll try it. I'm usually really, really disappointed. Usually I find the games are not as good as I remember them being. Now, GoldenEye is a classic, but just recently I went and tried that again, and it's like, wow, this game is like the worst graphics. I can't believe this was cutting edge in the day.
Yeah, you always
So,
remember it as like being this like whoa innovative thing at the time too, and you look back and you're like, whoa, this was
yeah,
you
I
remember it
remember the
different.
past games as if they had today's standard of graphics and design and artwork.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Melissa, that's all we have time for today. So thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Where can listeners get in touch if they'd like to know more about what we've discussed today?
Yeah, you can of course find me on the Palia Discord. But you can also find me on my LinkedIn, Melissa Maxin.
Okay, we'll have links both to your LinkedIn profile and to the Palia Discord. Thanks again. Bye, Melissa.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Community Lounge podcast. If you enjoyed it, please spread the word and share it with friends and colleagues who you think would also enjoy it. And to make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. And please give the show a rating or give a review, as this helps listeners find the podcast and it makes me feel good. You can find past episodes or learn more about the show at featureupvote.com/the community lounge. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a short ad for Feature Upvote, the player feedback platform I created and the sponsor of the show. Bye.
Your players love your game, but the community has ideas, and lots of them. The trouble is, their feedback is scattered across Discord, forums, social media, and somewhere deep within your inbox. You feel like you are drowning in feedback. That's where Feature Upvote comes in. With Feature Upvote, you can centralize all your player feedback in one place. Set up a feedback board where your community can post suggestions and vote for their favorites. The most popular ideas rise to the top, giving you a clear, data-driven roadmap. Pages are fully customizable to match your game's art style and vibe. With no logins required, no friction, just instant organized feedback from the people who care most. Stunlock Studios, the team behind V Rising, uses Feature Upvote as a centralized, organized way to collect and prioritize player feedback. With spam filtering, duplicate merging, and integrations for tools like Jira and Discord, nothing slips through the cracks. As a result, more player satisfaction and a stronger, loyal community. Get started today and get the flood of player feedback under control.